Mandate 2023.
Hello and welcome. You're watching Last Tick here on News 9, where we break down the day's action on Dalal Street. After a gap down opening of about 50 points, Indian markets made a strong comeback and ended today's session in the green with a last tick for Nifty coming in at 19,425 mark. For Nifty, it was a story of two halves pretty much. In the morning trade, the index was seen facing resistance around the 19,400 sort of levels. But once the index was able to move past those levels, bulls were back in action, and they were able to push the index higher to about 19,450 sort of levels. Ultimately, Nifty 50 settled at around 19,425 for the day, up about 0.15%. Sensex, on the other hand, was up 0.11% at 64,904 mark. Nifty mid cap and the small cap 100. The broader markets in general, which were mixed in the morning, also saw a good bit of a recovery. Mid-cap, the Nifty Mid-Cap 100 index ended around 0.48% higher for the day at 40,733 mark, whereas the Nifty Small Cap 100, which was actually in the red in the morning, was up 0.47% as well and ended around 13,360 sort of levels. Now, let's also look at how the sectors are performing. Among sectors, the banking pack, financial services and the metal pack led the charge. Nifty Bank, which opened in the red around 43,500 sort of levels, surged about 300 points to end above 43,800 levels, a level that was also a very crucial resistance for the index as indicated by the experts that we have been talking to. The index ended about 0.31% higher, as you can see on your screen, at 43,820 levels. Also, Nifty metal pack was among the major gainers today. The metal pack ended with gains of about 0.7%. On the other hand, auto, IT and media pack ended the day in the red. The IT pack was down 0.26%, the auto pack was down almost 0.5%, the media pack, which was the biggest loser in today's trade, was down about 1.23%. But with that, let's welcome our guest on the show, Mr. Amar Deo Singh, Senior Vice President at Angel One. Sir, welcome to the show. A very happy Diwali and a very happy Dhanteras to you.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, I mean, the market opened, gap down by about 50 points or so because of the weak global cues. But throughout the day, Nifty was able to stage a recovery, and in the afternoon trade, in fact, scaled above that 19,400 sort of levels and ended there. What do you make of this sort of a move, and how is the momentum looking in the market?
Yeah, overall, what we're seeing is that Nifty seems to be very strongly supported around the lower levels, and what we've seen is that global markets have also been more or less consolidating. Nifty's also been consolidating, but as you rightly said, that 19,450, 19,500, that's a very strong resistance zone for Nifty. I'm talking about the Nifty, not the Nifty futures. So what I see is that technically, if you ask me, is that some of the indicators are pointing towards a consolidation, and that clearly tells me that there's a very strong tussle going on between the bulls and the bears. So what happens in this case is that lower levels are being bought into and higher levels are being sold into, because that way the risk-reward ratio works in favor of either the bulls or the bears. And also at higher levels, the bulls, those who go long, they look at booking profits. So that's what we've been witnessing for the past few trading sessions. And also, if we go back in the derivatives data, we clearly see that there has been short covering. So it's more of short covering. So bulls, or I would say the bears who were not expecting such sort of pullback, they've got seem to be not exactly trapped, but they've got some hitting. They've been hit hard. So I would say that markets could trade range bound, looking at the technical parameters and other derivative parameters. As far as crucial zone of support resistance levels are concerned for Nifty, that would be around 19,000. Major supports in is around 19,200, 250 on the downside, whereas on the upside, 19,600, 700. That's on the upside. So it's more of a range play with the long-term trend still remaining up. And also, if you look at the advanced decline ratio, that also has remained positive. We had seen some bouts of, I would say, neutral or maybe some days declines being more than advances. But overall, the trend still remains intact and positive.
Trend remains positive. We are also seeing a positive trend in the banking pack, sir. Now, after a long time, I mean, the banking pack was a clear underperformer. I think it was the only sector which did not scale a new lifetime high in the rally that we saw in September. In fact, it has not touched a lifetime high since July. But we have seen good bit of resilience build up in the banking pack. The results overall were good. Do you expect, the banking pack to perhaps lead the charge at least going forward, or at least in the next couple of months till the end of 2023?
So if we look at the banking pack, I'll first talk about Bank Nifty because that basically has all the major banks, SBI, ICICI, HDFC, Kotak, Axis, IndusInd. So all of them are part of the Nifty bank. So what I see on the Nifty bank on the long-term charts is clearly that there is a loss of momentum. And also on the weekly charts, we've seen some sort of I would say double top formation on the weekly charts, because if we go back in time and look at Bank Nifty, so somewhere in July it had made a high of almost 46,370, and then again in September it had made a high of 46,300. So clearly what it tells me is that that's going to act as a very strong resistance zone. So that's still, I would say, 2,500 points from the current levels. But that tells me that there is more of consolidation happening. And also on the downside, if I look at, so 42,000 is a zone of support, crucial support for that. And above that, if you ask me, immediate resistance, so that will be around 44,200 levels or so. So Nifty, Bank Nifty, if I look at it from that perspective, the trend remains positive. In the intermediate term trend, the markets have, or Bank Nifty has moved from oversold territory. On the daily charts, it's moving slightly positive, but higher levels again will be sold into. Yeah, once we start seeing Bank Nifty sustaining over the 44,200 mark, then we could say that, yeah, there is some sort of trend change. But if I look at the major heavyweights, so for example, SBI is more or less flat. If I look at HDFC Bank isn't also indicating very strong positive movement. So these things clearly tell me that we could see some sort of consolidation. If I talk about Kotak Mahindra Bank, again it's in for consolidation. Except IndusInd Bank, if I look at, or IDFC First, if I look at, but they don't have much weighting. If I look at ICICI Bank, again very strong on the long-term charts, but medium term it's in for consolidation. So that's what is indicating in Nifty as well, because ICICI Bank, SBI, then HDFC, Kotak, all these are currently in a consolidation.
So moving on to stocks, one of the stocks that I was very closely tracking this in today's trade was Honasa Consumers. Now, I mean, after a muted listing, the stock has been on a fair bit of a decline in the past couple of sessions or so. In fact, even today, it dipped as much as 15% to touch, the days low of around 256 sort of levels. But then we heard from Jefferies, which has initiated a buy call on the stock price with a target price of around 520 rupees. Because of that, the stock was able to bounce back and ended in fact about 5% higher at around 318 sort of levels on the NSE. Now it's still a fair bit below the IPO price. What's your opinion on Honasa Consumer, sir? Is it a buy in your opinion? Because from the experts that we have been talking to, most of them have, advised staying away from the stock.
I would say, see, this is a company which is into digital, I would say, and in terms of personal space. So clearly that tells me that there is opportunity for the stock, and the stock, if you look at that, this company came into being in 2016, and post that the company has been trying to turn corners. So means it was in red and then they moved into black, and they are primarily into the beauty and the personal care segment. So if we look at this particular company per se, see, such companies will have to be very agile and afoot, because in terms of being in the beauty and personal care products, you have to have a very strong product line, which is churning out new products, and also at the same time, you have to have seamless, I would say, experience for the consumers who are coming online for digital, because it's primarily a digital platform for all these personal care products. So I would say that would be too early to say, but yeah, one definitely needs to be cautious. And we've seen that the investors also, today there was a bounce back because, as you rightly said, of the Jefferies report that has come in. So we'll have to see whether it sustains or whether the stock continues to trend lower. So one needs to be slightly cautious in the stock.
Now, sir, as we are in the last leg of the earnings season, a very big company, Mahindra and Mahindra, reported its Q2 results during the market hours. The results more or less are have positively surprised the street. Standalone net profit for the quarter rose 67% on a year-on-year basis, coming in at 3,452 crore for the September quarter from 2,068 crore in the year ago period. Now, analysts were expecting about a 30 to 37% jump in the net profit figure, which so we have seen a big beat as far as the profitability is concerned. Now, the sharp growth in profits was on the back of strong performance of its SUV segment, which saw an EBITDA or growth of about 88% on a year-on-year basis. However, farm equipment segment, especially the tractor segment, continues to be an overhang as both EBITDA and volumes have declined on a year-on-year basis. Now, revenue from operations grew about 17% to 25,773 crores in the September quarter, from up, as I mentioned, up from 22,105 crore. It has also come in ahead of street expectations that had pegged the revenue, standalone revenue, to come in at around 24,400 crores or so. Now, automotive sales rose about 18% on a year-on-year basis, coming in at 2.2 lakh units, driven by a surge in SUV sales. However, tractor sales fell nearly 4% on a year-on-year basis to 90,061 units. EBITDA, which is earnings before interest, tax, depreciation and amortization, grew a healthy 24% to 4,397 crore. It was way ahead of the estimates of about 3,200 crores. Margin also expanded sharply by about 106 basis points, coming in at 17.06% in the September quarter versus 16% in the year ago period. Now, sir, coming to you, the results overall look good and are actually ahead of expectations. However, the stock, which was down about 2% or so, ended pretty much there. Why didn't we see any sort of a recovery, even though we have seen a good beat as far as profits are concerned?
Yeah, I would say that, see, if you look at the stock, we have to understand that markets are very intelligent beasts. So a lot of the smart investors, they understand what's happening on the ground. They understand what's happening in the economy. They understand what's happening in the sector. They understand what's happening in the company. So what we saw earlier, we saw a good up move in the stock for the last few months. So if you look at, go back in time, and somewhere in April, the stock was around 1100, 1140, 50 levels. And from there, the stock witnessed a significant rally towards 1600 plus 1650, those levels. And now we're seeing the stock correct slightly towards 1520. So you rightly said that the results have been phenomenal. If you look at the Q2 growth in terms of profitability, that's been exceptionally better as compared to the same Q2 last year, or almost 67% growth has been there. And what we are seeing for the last, yesterday was a good day for the stock. Today the stock, despite the news, has close to 2% lower. But from a long-term perspective, if I look at the long-term charts, if I look at from a long-term perspective, this is one stock one can definitely look at having in one's portfolio in a SIP mode. That would be quite useful. Technically speaking, the stock has formed a very strong base. So is forming very strong base around these current levels. So if I look at some around 1450, 1500, that's a very strong base for the stock, where the stock could witness some upside move. But what I see technically on the charts is somewhere or the other 1600 is a level, 1600, 1650. There's a lot of stock selling that's happening at those levels. those who go long, they look at exiting those levels because that's a level where the stock is meeting with some resistance and some selling pressure is also coming around those levels. So that's a level to watch out for. Otherwise, I would say from a long-term perspective, the stock remains strong and positive.
Now, sir, the SUV segment has been a big driver for Mahindra and Mahindra in the past few quarters. And in fact, if you look at the segment-wise results, phenomenal results as far as the SUV segment go. But now with, other companies such as your Maruti also going big on this particular segment, do you expect some sort of a slowdown to, come in that SUV growth trajectory that we have seen in the past few quarters? And will that have an impact on the stock?
I would say I wouldn't read too much into that because what is happening is that this is a sector where the interest of, I would say, buyers is very high. The SUV sector, because that gives a different feel altogether, and it's also a level of satisfaction and the I would say the engagement or the emotional connect with that buyers have with SUVs is at a different level. So and that also reflects the purchasing power of the people who are getting into the SUV, I would say, segment. So yeah, there will be competition, but I think Mahindra's some of their I would say vehicles in the SUV segment, they are quite popular, and that will continue to grow. Overall, if we see I would say a dip in the economy or some concerns there in terms of inflation or interest rate hike and all that, so that could have some impact. Then that would impact the overall segment per se. Otherwise, I don't see much of a issue there for Mahindra.
Now, on the other side, sir, the tractor segment has been a big pain point for the company due to lack of rural demand. But now, with festive season kicking in and falling in Q3, do you expect some sort of a revival on that front?
So, if you look at the tractor segment, what we see is that this is a time where there would be some, I would say, a lean period or so, but going forward in the next couple of months, there should be ideally be a pickup in demand for that segment, and we'll have to also see how the credit offtake happens in the rural areas with regard to banks, because that also would be a very key parameter in terms of the tractor sales.
Now, sir, before we let you go, Samvat 2080 kicks off on November 12th, the day of Diwali. Any sectors or particular theme that you can, perhaps recommend to our viewers here on First Pick?
I would say, if we look at sectors, there would be sectors such as capital goods sector. Then we would see that even FMCG sector and the financial sector, these are some sectors which are expected to do good. But there again, what we need to understand is that the sector might do good, but we'll have to do a lot of stock picking there, because it would be stock specific. So for example, in the capital goods, we could have look at Blue Star. If in the FMCG, we could look at Nestle. We could look at then we have Crystal is one stock one can look at from the ratings table. Then in IT also, we look at Persistent from a long-term perspective. So these are few stocks. But overall, we have to understand that if India is to grow, then most of the sectors would perform. Yeah, there would be some sort of concerns with regard to sectors, but that happens only in two cases: either the input cost of those sector increases where the margins are impacted, or secondly, if they are too much export oriented or export dependent, and there we see some major, I would say, upheavals, and that has an impact. So these are a couple of things that we need to keep a watch on. Otherwise, I would say we should see a good year ahead.
All right, that's the view coming in from Mr. Amardev Singh. Sir, always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for joining us here on First Pick. And again, a happy Diwali to you and your family, sir.
Thank you so much for having me, and wish you and your viewers a very happy Diwali and a wonderful year ahead.
But with that, we have completely run out of time on this edition of Last Pick. Keep watching News 9.
News 9 big coverage of 5 assembly polls. Mandate 2023.
Hello and welcome. You're watching Business Plus. This is News 9. Let's start with our top stories. Headlines first. Get ready for satellite internet in India. Jio Satellite Communications and Bharti-backed OneWeb receive licenses to provide satellite broadband services. And BYJ is on a sacking spree. EdTech giant fires further 600 employees from content and marketing teams amid restructuring exercise. As Indians take to festive buying, Amazon releases data on customer shopping insights. Shoppers are eyeing premium items, 1 out of 4 purchases made on EMI. And flying taxis are here. Indigo wants to take you from Delhi to Gurugram in just under 7 minutes through a flying taxi. Partners with Archer Aviation to launch air taxi service across India in 2026. All those stories right here with News 9 with me, Karthik Malhotra, in the studio. Karthik, good morning.
Hi, Shweta. How are you?
Hello, I'm very well. How are you?
All right, doing well.
Let's start with the first story that we're tracking, and that is, actually let's start with the story that has made me very excited, and that is Jio.
Which one? There are so many of them today, Shweta.
But okay, all right. So let's start with the Jio's and Bharti Airtel's satellite internet service. Satellite internet service is finally here. It's become a reality. They've got the licenses.
So they've got the license, yes, they haven't yet got the spectrum allocation. And that is pending right now at the end of TRAI, because TRAI has not yet been able to get a new chairman, and that vacancy has been pending for a while. But finally, the government has given a go-ahead, a license, and there are 2 licenses involved here. They already have the first one. The second one is specifically an ISP license, which is an internet service provider license, specifically linked to using VSAT and other technologies to be able to transmit data to and from satellites, and thereby using satellites to actually be able to transmit internet and high-speed data connectivity to remote locations within the country.
Does this mean internet access everywhere at all time?
So I think there is still a lot of clarity awaited, Shweta. What this definitely means is that as service providers, they can now, both Jio as well as Airtel, Jio using the Jio Space Fiber and Airtel using the Airtel OneWeb, can actually go ahead and start offering these services as soon as they have access to spectrum.
Okay.
Right. Until they have access to spectrum, obviously this is a bit of a challenge. They can't commercially roll it out despite the license. But what this entails is that now whatever you want to do, let's say in terms of laying of optical fiber networks, which Reliance had done very seamlessly and had spent billions of dollars worth of investments laying off the cables for 5G speeds, for connectivity of internet to locations across India. But the cost sort of becomes prohibitive when you want to take it to really far-flung, rural, deep-rooted territories within the country. What satellite internet does primarily is, again, this whole vision of the Ambani family, of Mukesh Ambani as well as now the sons, really pushing the envelope when it comes to connectivity for all, making India 2G Mukt, all of that. So all that ties in well together, because now using satellite connectivity, you can throw internet, beam internet, 5G speed, broadband type internet to these far-flung areas, and you don't have to lay those cables and spend on that infrastructure.
So no more digging the ground.
No more digging the ground, no more, multiple reams and reams of cables being dug and spread across the length and breadth of the country. Now, to answer your specific question, is it going to be internet everywhere? I think that would be the eventual goal, both for Reliance Jio as well as Bharti Airtel. I think the eventual goal would be like when you go to the US, you go to Singapore, you go to UK, any of these more developed countries, you actually have internet pretty much on the tap everywhere you go. You just need to latch onto that city's internet. So I think the eventual goal will be to get there. But the immediate problem that satellite internet and by way of these licenses will solve is remote, far-flung rural connectivity without really investing and opting for subsidies to keep cost low for the rural folk to actually, get access to high-speed internet. I think that gets solved immediately, and internet everywhere should hopefully be the next step.
All right, internet everywhere. And will it be internet at a speed, at a higher speed, obviously, but will it be affordable is the question. At least imminently, let's say within one next year, if satellite internet gets rolled out, will it be affordable?
So I think the whole push for satellite-based internet for rural connectivity and far-flung remote connectivity is to keep it affordable.
Okay.
Because if you were to lay the traditional OFN cables across the length and breadth of the country, which you've done already, and the private sector has done that tremendously, but then to lay that sort of infrastructure to reach the far-flung areas, you would require the government's support, you would require subsidies to keep the cost affordable, for the far-flung areas. But with satellite connectivity, I think that has been the real push, that you can keep cost low and you can make internet available pretty much in every corner of the country. Now, obviously, there is great deal of competition also which is likely to come in this space, which will keep the costs under pressure.
And competitive.
And competitive.
So you have the Jio, you have the Airtel, and you also have Starlink.
You have Starlink and you also have Amazon now coming into the fray. Both Starlink, which is run by, owned by Elon Musk, as well as Amazon, have not yet received the government's go-ahead. They haven't yet received the license.
Applied for it.
But they have applied for it. And they are waiting in the fray, get that approval, and enter the market and provide internet. So I think overall, there is going to be a cost competitiveness, like we have seen the data wars panning out on ground. We will see those data wars panning out in outer space as well. And internet connectivity, affordability, access to all would be pretty much the principles that every ISP out there would want to provide using satellite networks. And I think those who are unable to sustain businesses by way of keeping these costs low will have their days numbered, and those who have deeper pockets will obviously keep prices low till as long as they have the absolute authority and monopoly, if I may, to move prices up.
And before we move on, when can we expect to roll out? Jio got a license a couple of months ago. OneWeb, Airtel's OneWeb got it now.
That's right.
When can we expect to roll out?
I think it's all right now dependent on spectrum allocation and spectrum auctions, as we've seen decades ago, and a continuing story. I think more than time, Shweta, it's also a function of a lot of legalities, a lot of clearances, a lot of auction bidding, etc. So I think the spectrum allocation is something which is the single key determinant right now in being able to guess or not guess a timeline. So I think maybe we should definitely expect it should come through soon after the new TRAI chairman comes to office and the process gets kick-started. So yeah, I think, just to take a wild guess right now, mid next year is when we should hopefully start receiving some satellite signals for internet.
Well, that's a good timeline. Mid next year is by when you can expect satellite internet to finally make a debut in India. Remember, OneWeb and Jio already have procured license. We are given to understand Amazon and Starlink are also ready with their application and could be given a license anytime now. So more competition heating up in the internet space. But moving on to a story that makes headlines days after days, BYJ, it appears, is sacking more people, as many as 600 employees, specifically from content and marketing team. This is a part of the restructuring exercise which has been on now for a while. They want to cut cost and cut cost wherever they can. Content marketing team perhaps first one to begin with. So
not the first, in fact, Shweta. I'm hoping this would be the last team to finally now get sacked. We've seen spades and spades of sacking at BYJ over the last 1 year, definitely. And within this 1 year, we've also seen multiple other challenges come to the surface when it comes to BYJ. Number one, of course, its valuation taking a major dent from about $22.8 billion coming down to the vicinity of $5 to $6 billion. So it was once a decacorn twice over, and now just about half, five times a unicorn. So it's obviously, its reputation has taken a beating. The whole edtech model has taken a beating, and revenues have been dwindling, even though the FY22 financial reports, which got filed just about a week ago, first week of November, saw that BYJ did register a 2x growth in profit. Its losses are still, despite losses narrowing, the losses are still there on the books of FY22. And FY22 is, in fact, before the problems really started coming to surface. It is going to be FY23, which is going to be the real determinant of what the real state of affairs at BYJU'S is. My guess at this point, and just a guess, I don't have access to the numbers of BYJU'S for FY23, but I have a feeling 22-23 was the year where EdTech started backing down, when people started getting their children back to regular school. And you really saw this frenzy of EdTech die down gradually. So I think the growth that it registered in FY22 would not be at the same clip as its books should register in FY23, and its losses
So you're expecting more turbulence?
should widen. Yeah, so I'm expecting more turbulence, but again, that's just a guess at the moment, looking at the macro environment between FY22 and FY23. Now, specifically, we've seen offices have been shut down. As many as 6 offices of BYJU'S have been shut down from multiple cities, multiple locations. We've seen rounds after rounds of sacking, and now this latest one comes, 600 employees sacked from the content and marketing video team specifically. So I think at some level, the new CEO Arjun Mohan is also looking at a consolidation towards employees contributing to core businesses, profitable businesses should be part of this new restructure, and those who are contributing to fringe services, could have but not must have services, are the ones who are being shown the door. So will this be the last of the many rounds of sacking? We certainly hope so for the sake of employees, but it's difficult to pinpoint and put a sort of number to it, that is this really going to be the finality of sackings at BYJU'S or not. It has enough and more troubles.
It could
on
just
its
be a
hands.
start of a major restructuring process, which is currently
Of
on,
course,
and letting go of lots of employees.
So I think ever since
in
this
the process.
restructuring happened, we've seen offices shut down, and we've seen sackings, and we've seen the sale of Epic, and it hasn't yet been sold.
And I want to talk about that.
Yeah.
Epic and Great Learning, we know they're up for grabs.
Yeah.
Are there any takers?
So there are takers. I think the conversations are on. US-based companies in talks. There are 3-4 of them, which are in talks. But the latest that we saw, Shweta, was that Epic may actually get sold for about $400 million, while it was bought in 2021 for $500 million. So in any case, it's a garage sale, it's a distress sale. And the $1.2 billion term loan B that BYJU'S owes, it hasn't yet been able to assign a timeline to it, or a way by which it will be able to muster up enough funds to be able to pay that, repay that loan. So I think enough troubles at BYJU'S, and these troubles are not looking like they will end anytime soon. So I think a fundamental question to ask is that while you have a new CEO, you have Arjun Mohan, you have a new board of directors after many board of directors, many directors from the board had quit earlier this year. Is it time for the board to really finally come out with a decision that perhaps BYJU Ravindran need not stay at the company?
Okay, well, that would be an important decision. We don't know if that's going to be made. But yes, talks around BYJU'S and the uncertainty of what's going to happen next continue to mar not just employees, but a lot of people who have witnessed the magnificent growth of this edtech giant, whose valuation has since halved, less than half, quarter of a valuation at this point in time. But let's move on to a story that is coming in and maybe lift some spirits. Festive cheers, festive buying. People are buying, and people are buying in great numbers. I'm not saying so. Amazon is. Amazon's come out with its report on customer insights for people who bought during the Great India Sale. Some very interesting trends. But here's what I picked on. That is, out of all purchases made, or out of every purchase made, 4 people out of 1 out of 4 people is actually buying on EMI, which means they're buying more than they can afford at the moment.
Yeah, so that is excellent data coming in, Shweta, and I think let's address this first, and let's address it in the context of what people are buying as well. So the report released by Amazon India suggests that almost 110 crore visitors came to Amazon India's platform in the last 1 month, ever since the sale started on the 6th or 7th of October up until now. So in the last 1 month, 110 crore customers have visited Amazon India. Okay, India's total population is 140 crores. So, just putting that in context, 40 lakh customers are new customers, first time visitors. Now, where are these new as well as existing customers coming from, especially those who are actually checking out, buying something and checking out. About 80% of those are coming from tier 2 and tier 3 cities. And what are they buying? They are buying 5G enabled smartphones.
So that's the most sold item.
Right. So that's the most sold item. 5G smartphones is what people want to buy, and this demand is coming from tier 2 and tier 3 cities. 5G smartphones are expensive. Tier 2, tier 3 cities don't have the same income levels as metropolitan cities or tier 1 cities, and hence I think it seems lucrative for them to go ahead and opt for an EMI. And these EMI schemes are also fairly interesting because there are certain cards and certain schemes that offer you a no-cost EMI. So if you want to buy a 50,000 rupee phone and spread it over 6 months as EMI, you could actually get away by paying 0% interest on that EMI. So why would somebody not opt for that? Now again, we could try and read between the lines and assume that that there isn't enough money available in the hands of the population in tier 2 and tier 3 cities, and hence they're opting for loan. But I think my counter to that, Shweta, politely, would be that if they don't have the money, then they would not really be making those high value purchases. And even if they do have the money, I think they're better off keeping that money in the bank, even if it earns them a very small interest rate, and pay this no cost EMI as opposed to taking money, all of it out of your bank and paying it and losing out on that interest delta as well. So this is my sort of reading of the situation. What else are people buying? So you have smartphones, definitely. People are buying large screen televisions, and these large screen televisions are 55 inches and upwards. People are buying smartwatches, and people are buying, not in as much measure, but people are buying white goods, within which I think one theme that is standing out for me is the fact that people are getting a little more health conscious. So what is in demand are air fryers, which require very little oil to fry those delicious pakoras. They have sports equipment, outdoor sports equipment, as well as home sports equipment, those dumbbells and those stretch bands, etc. So that is what people are buying. But I think the larger theme emerging, high value purchases, expensive premium products being purchased, the purchases coming from tier 2 and tier 3 cities, and people not really opting for cash on delivery or making one-time purchases, rather splitting them into EMIs.
All right, those are interesting insights from the Amazon report. But all in all, I know you and I disagree on whether you should spend that money, whether you should save that money. I think we can agree that Indians are getting more aspirational.
No doubt, absolutely, Shweta.
Buying across
look at data across all aspects. I mean, there are the naysayers who say that the K-shaped recovery that India saw has actually widened the inequality gap. I don't contest that because I think there is data that supports that as well. But aspirations are a very different animal. So affordability and aspiration are two different issues altogether. Affordability for certain pockets may have gone down, but aspirations only continue to rise, which means we shall overcome and we will chug along and pull through.
So more premium items, more 5G enabled smartphones, more health conscious people buying stuff that they can consume, as well as wearable items. All of those, of course, are indicators, insights coming in through Amazon Festive report. But moving on to a story again, which is very exciting. Flying taxis are here. They are fine. I mean, this is something that I think I was very excited about this morning. For the longest time, we talked about future of mobility. This is the future of mobility. When you have enough taxis on ground and enough air pollution as is, what happens next?
And these are electric air taxis.
These are electric air taxis. So tell us what's happened. We know it's going to be Indigo. Indigo has tied up with Archer Aviation. What are they going to do?
Right, Shweta, I hate to be the party spoiler, especially as we head into the weekend. But, first when I saw the news item this morning, I thought maybe, hey, maybe I'm not looking at it, reading it correctly. Then I looked at the date on the masthead and I said, okay, it's not 1st April, so nobody's kidding anybody here, right? But then the suspicion starts coming in. So I think overall great, air taxis, great idea. It's an idea which has seen some sort of attraction in the West. Enough and more companies in Silicon Valley offering air taxi services, not flying people, but getting enough funding to enable them to be able to fly people going forward. Now, what is Indigo really planning to do? I think the Archer Aviation Indigo MOU suggests that Indigo will seek Archer's investments and help in developing as many as 200 air taxis. These 200 air taxis will be deployed perhaps as early as starting 2026 in Delhi, Mumbai and Bengaluru. Rightly so, I think the most traffic-ridden cities in the country. And these three cities are going to get the first lot of air taxis. However, to play the party spoiler, party pooper, there isn't a government nod on air taxis in India yet. Will it happen till 2026? We don't know, because, you know, if you remember, Shweta, let me jog your memory, 5 years, 6 years back, there were talks about your pizza getting delivered using a drone. There were talks of Amazon and Flipkart delivering your couriers using drones and getting them right to your doorstep or right till your balcony. And air deliveries were something that were really talked about and very evangelistic in their approach towards the future of logistics. It never really happened. At best, what we saw, thankfully, was during COVID, certain drones were used to transport medicines to far-flung areas, right? But beyond that, or even vaccinations, if I remember correctly. So beyond that, beyond this emergency usage, we haven't seen drone deliveries pick up. Because there are multiple, there are air pockets, there are civil aviation norms that come in, there are clearances required. You cannot be at a certain altitude, you cannot fly in a certain area. You will need a lot of other communication infrastructure like ATC, etc. to be set up. So if something as small as a delivery drone could not see light of the day, we are here talking about an air taxi that can accommodate 4 passengers and 1 pilot stroke driver, depending on how you want to see it now. And I think the idea is great, there's no doubt. I mean,
it's just the idea for now.
What better to actually beat the traffic blues, reach your location in time, come back in time, don't have to waste precious hours whiling away time and emitting pollution, for the environment. But will it take off? I really am skeptical at this moment.
I mean, you're skeptical about how soon?
No, I'm skeptical about the whole concept of air taxis, because we are yet to look at the safety security concerns.
Of course.
I mean, we've seen data of road crashes, road accidents. This can potentially definitely be life-threatening. Even road crashes are potentially life-threatening, but then there is enough probability with the safety security features built into cars today. And if you're geared up well, you're wearing a helmet, if you're on a two-wheeler, and if you're wearing your seatbelt, if you're in a car, there are good enough chances for you to not die. In an air taxi, one accident could actually kill 5 people. So I think a lot of policy changes will have to be made, a lot of clearances will have to be sought, a lot of safety, security features, mechanisms will have to be built in, and then of course the whole creation of infrastructure, right, from ATCs to launch pads to landing stations to applications around which you can book your taxi and ride or fly in it. I think a lot of ground needs to be covered, and 2026 definitely seems like a pipe dream, but it's sort of, turn around within this decade also, I hope I'm proven wrong, seems a little far-fetched right now.
Okay, a little far-fetched, that is the word coming in from Karthik at this point in time. Obviously, a lot of regulatory clearances, hurdles and policy framework that has to be arrived at. But hey, necessity is the mother of invention. So we never know. 2026 is what Aviation Interglow, which is the parent company for Indigo, is targeting. We'll of course have to wait and watch out, but air taxis are finally here. But with that, we've run out of time on this show. Thank you for watching.
Hamas attacks Israel. Israel Defense Forces strike back at Hamas. As the war unfolds, watch the comprehensive coverage of the Israel war only on News 9+. To watch the full story, download the app now.
They picked my husband. He was tortured there for 2 years. He was enforced disappeared. We had no idea where he is. Within 15 minutes, we got the information that the whole area is surrounded by Pakistan Army. I came out from that in disguise, and after 5 to 6 hours, I was in Kandahar. I don't have any message for Pakistan. There is no politician in Pakistan. They are puppets of Pakistan Army.
Streaming now. This and more streaming on world's first news OTT, News 9 Plus. Download now.
Hamas attacks Israel. Israel Defense Forces strike back at Hamas. As the war unfolds, watch the comprehensive coverage of the Israel war only on News 9 Plus. To watch the full story, download the app now.
Smog over cities, toxins in the air, blackened lungs, a spike in lung cancer among non-smokers.
The air quality in Delhi is so horrible. Child born today would be smoking 15 to 20 cigarette equivalent from the very first breath of his life.
60% of India's population doesn't breathe clean air even as per the Indian national standards.
It has huge effect on the lungs. So for ourselves, for our children, our grandchildren, we should be 24/7 concerned about the environment.
Are you getting cancer without smoking? You needn't smoke a cigarette for your lung to turn frighteningly black. Lung cancer cases are seeing a sharp spike among India's non-smokers. Delhi homemaker Neera Srivastav was diagnosed with lung cancer in June 2022.
पूछे उनसे ये क्यों हुआ डॉक्टर साहब, तो डॉक्टर साहब बोले कि देखिए आप स्मोक नहीं करती हैं और आप ड्रिंक भी नहीं करती हैं, तो ये पोल्यूशन है। बोले जो दिल्ली एनसीआर वगैरह में बहुत ज्यादा पोल्यूशन है।
Nobody in the family drinks or smoke, and we are not in contact of those people who drinks or smoke.
इसी के लिए अपना बचाव करते हैं। देखिए अभी वॉक तो करने के लिए जा नहीं सकते हैं बाहर, इतना भी पोल्यूशन है, और खिड़की दरवाजा खोलते नहीं है क्योंकि पोल्यूशन का डर है, तो इसलिए लगा के रखे हैं। दिन भर तो काम करते रहते हैं, तो इसलिए इस कमरे में ड्राइंग रूम में रखा हुआ है, और बेडरूम में भी एक एयर प्यूरिफायर रखा है कि रात भर सोते हैं तो उसमें चला के रखते हैं।
Neera isn't alone. A study by Medanta Medicity says half of their lung cancer patients are non-smokers.
Most of the patients were in 60s and 70s, and now the age has preponed by about decade and a half. That means there were patients in late 20s also, many in 30s, many in 40s. And when we looked at the younger population, less than 50, this figure went up to 70%. And when we looked at the less than 40 years age group, this figure went up to 100%. That's a very, very, very significant and very major and very frightening finding.
People will get their lungs choked with carbon. You may remember I had actually shown the pictures of two lungs, a person living in Himachal and a person living in Delhi. And the one whose lung was in the Himachal, from Himachal, they were baby pink. And the lungs from Delhi were like scarred with black tar. It has huge effect on the lungs, but it also has huge effects on children who are growing up.
US EPA today has a list of more than 200 called as air toxics. They occur at very small amount in the air, but cancer potency of those are very high. Even in very small and minor dosage, and if we are exposed to them over a long period of time, then that triggers cancer.
Air quality in Delhi is so horrible. Child born today would be smoking 15 to 20 cigarette equivalent from the very first breath of his life. By the time you are 30, you've been exposed to cancer-causing chemicals for 30 years and your tissues are ready to become cancerous. This is why we are seeing more and more cancer in women, more and more cancer in younger age group, and more cancers in so-called non-smokers.
Particles coming from diesel combustion, coal combustion, they are a lot more toxic than the windblown dust. In fact, WHO way back in 2012, they had specially classified diesel emissions as class 1 carcinogen for strong link with lung cancer. It is in the same bracket as tobacco smoking, asbestos, so it is really at the top bracket.
World Health Organization says that lung cancer due to pollution has increased over time. If you are vulnerable due to respiratory conditions and you are exposed to extremely high levels of pollution, then there is an immediate trigger effect. They are attributing 16% of deaths due to lung cancer to air pollution. ICMR data says that lung cancer cases have gone up from 98,278 in 2020 to 1,03,371 in 2022, which is a jump of nearly 5.2%.
63 out of 100 most polluted places on Earth are in India. The Air Quality Life Index report says that an average Indian could live 5 years longer if the air quality met WHO standards.
60% of India's population doesn't breathe clean air even as per the Indian national standards. This entire belt of Indo-Gangetic Plain, where more than 40% of Indian population reside, they can add up to 7 years of their life if the air quality met WHO standards.
The challenge is that the symptoms of lung cancer, which include persistent cough, chest pain while coughing, blood in sputum, weight loss, fatigue, etc., are also the symptoms of tuberculosis. So lung cancer cases often end up being misdiagnosed as tuberculosis.
Before you diagnose such a case as tuberculosis, do some confirmatory tests, for example, sputum test, bronchoscopy, CT scan, so that if a cancer case is lurking in between these tuberculosis cases, that case is not misdiagnosed and mistreated, and therefore precious time being wasted is avoided.
To protect our lungs, lead a healthy lifestyle, exercise, food, vegetables, fruits. That's the general advice. When the AQI is bad, you should not go to crowded places, you should not go to marketplaces, you should not stand at the intersections to the extent possible.
Real serious efforts by the government are absolutely necessary. It needs immediate attention and action.
This environment subject should be introduced all over the country, and then even the media has to give programs.
The National Clean Air Program, which was rolled out in 2019, is a very ambitious program that aims at reducing air pollution by 25 to 30%. So we are very, very hopeful that in years to come, India will also replicate the story of some Western countries where at some point the air was very bad and the citizens now breathe in clean air.
It still requires another 60% reduction to meet the clean air target. But it has to happen across the region and across the country.
Insist that the air is cleaned up. Now electric movement is going on, that let's convert to electric. That will help. Construction should be wet construction, not dry construction. And you penalize people who are not taking the precaution.
Air pollution is a monster which is there posing an existential crisis for the human race. It's not a chemical issue, it's not an environmental issue, it's a pure health issue.
Rockets are unguided military projectiles. They're cheap, easy to build, and fired en masse, they can deliver both physical and psychological effects. The Soviet Union used Katyusha rockets with devastating effect against Nazi Germany during the Second World War. Today, every military uses rockets. Now, in the last few decades, terror groups like Hezbollah and Hamas have pioneered the use of military-style rockets to attack Israeli civilians. Hezbollah, based in the West Bank, has over 100,000 rockets and even guided missiles. Hamas has tens of thousands of such rockets in Gaza, beginning with variants of the Qassam rocket. The Qassam rocket has a range of between 5 and 17 kilometers. Hamas has other sophisticated rockets like the Grad and the M75 and the M302, which have ranges of between 40 and 160 kilometers. But these bigger rockets are complicated to build and hence they're fewer in number. Hamas's mainstay is the Qassam rocket. It's a simple steel tube rocket. It has a 9 kg warhead. It's around 6 feet tall. It has variants going up to 8 feet with a 10 kg warhead. Now these rocket components are cheap, they're easily available. In fact, in many cases, Hamas has even converted metal water pipes into Qassam rockets. The rocket fuel is made from sugar and potassium nitrate. The warhead is made of TNT and ammonium nitrate with steel shrapnel embedded to cause the maximum damage. Now, the rockets can be launched from anywhere along the border with Israel into populated areas. And seen from a terror group's perspective, it's far easier to launch dozens of rockets to kill and maim civilians than it is to mount complicated terror strikes. Now, Iran is believed to have helped Hamas build its own rockets locally. Hamas has rocket engineers who build these projectiles in secret underground factories in Gaza's tunnels. Now, Israel has developed the sophisticated Iron Dome missile defense system to intercept rockets fired by Hamas and Hezbollah. But each Iron Dome interceptor missile costs between $50,000 and $100,000 to make. But each Qassam rocket, on the other hand, costs just $300 and $800. It's far cheaper than Israel's interceptor rockets. So the short-range rocket, for these reasons of cost and simplicity, will continue to be the terror group's